evening. Today is Monday, April 1st, 2019. This is an additional workshop that's been scheduled to discuss the budget. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. This is going to just be sort of an informal additional workshop that we've asked so that the board could come together and discuss the budget. As many of you may or may not know, this is really our only time to openly talk about the budget and share some ideas and concerns with each other. So we've asked Lee to come back tonight. Unfortunately, our superintendent, Mr. Albano, is not feeling well, and he could not join us this evening, so we hope that he's feeling better soon. And any questions, I'm sure Lee, anything that we cannot answer, we can find out from Mr. Albano and can get back to us on that. Lee, did you want to kind of just give a rough overview of where we're at? I know there's been a lot of talk this weekend about state aid and if there's additional aid coming to Tuckahoe and where we stand with that.
Sure. Do you want me to go through the presentation again?
You know, if you want to kind of just briefly go through it, we as a board have seen it. There's some members of the audience here tonight who may want to take a look at it.
Okay, so this is an updated presentation that we've been presenting to the board the past few board meetings and workshops. And let me just figure out how to do that. All right, Gary, I'm putting in the password as it says here. Excuse me. And it doesn't seem to be taking it.
I'll be locked out.
Oh, because it's Gary. Is it Gary's password, I think? Gary's.
Right, but he left it on here,
he
so I thought I was following the correct instructions.
Is it on cap one?
Is that the correct password? Yeah. I was putting that in.
That's gonna do it.
You have caps lock on?
There we go.
I think we're there.
There we go. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we're loading.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the presentation from the superintendent, which goes through the various strategic goals for the that was discussed in the current year that Mr. Albano and the administration would like to move forward to the following year. They all flow into the district-wide budget objectives, as he discussed, as Mr. Albano discussed, for the guidance counselor, the district-wide social-emotional learning programs, professional development, and some technology goals, an SRO, a school resource officer, and various other coverages for security, and staying within the allowable tax levy. There are the enrollment sizes, some highlights that were discussed for the elementary school. And this presentation can be found on the website. The middle school class sizes, middle school highlights of some programs that were instituted this year or for next year. The high school enrollment, as you can see, is growing as well, and maintaining the AP class offerings and some other new objectives to meet enrollment growth or some other small add-ons to the program. Those are some new staffing proposals that do have a significant impact on the budget, as you'll see as we go forward, that staff and benefits is mostly more than typically 80% of our budget. There's additional budget highlights for various programs and staff. Mr. Albano discussed the school resource officer. Actually, to go back, There's a three-part component to that. The model is as a law enforcement officer, as a teacher to teach law-related curriculum to various age groups, and as a counselor to work with teachers, counselors, and administrators, as well as to be a mediation or mediator in the district for any de-escalation of problems within the district. Also, some requests that have been put on the table are 5 additional occupational education placements for general education students in the high school, restoring the one-loop bus transportation system, which would require 3 additional buses, and possibly providing 2 digital signs for each school building. Now, when we go to the financial side of the equation, let's take a look, see if I have the correct, nope, this is the first one. Let's see if it's this one. Gary, I'm looking for the one that says April 1st. If you know where I can find that one. I'm looking for mine that's dated April 1st, I think. I just saw the ones from March in there.
This is the only one I have.
Can I see slide 1? There we go. Okay, so I just go to escape, do the full screen, present. Okay, so this is the most recent financials. They were updated to take into account the discussions that we had at previous meetings. No, this is the same one.
It's the same one. Yeah.
No, so I guess mine is not in here. I can just present it to you verbally if you want. Gary, I don't see it in here. Lauren had said she emailed it to you. You don't have it there? Okay. All right, so I do have a copy of the hard copy of it, but I don't have...
We can go through it amongst us.
Yeah, I gave everyone on
Sure,
the board
we
a
all have
copy.
it. Everyone has a copy?
Yeah.
And then it is on the website.
Would you like a copy? Stick it in the middle? Yeah. Stick that in the middle.
So just to give you a brief summary, the maximum allowable tax levy increase that the district is permitted based on the calculation that we get from the Office of the State Controller is 2.22%, which translates to $620,000 if we went to the maximum as an increase that we could increase the tax levy. If we stay within the maximum allowable tax increase, the district homeowner would be eligible for the property tax relief credit, assuming they had paid taxes in the previous year and have an income of $275,000 or less. The initial expenditure budget is $35,482,700, which is a budget-to-budget increase of $1,457,150, or 4.29%. And that is balanced by a revenue budget of the same. And in order to balance the revenue budget, we've discussed that $1,823,952 would come from appropriated reserve, the appropriated ERS reserve of $100,000, and the remainder from the appropriated fund balance to balance the budget. We found out today that the district is eligible for some additional state aid, but it only amounts to $14,000 more. So they did add money to the state budget, but Tuckahoe itself only received $14,000 more from the new appropriations from the executive budget.
Okay, and was that because of the changes with the foundation aid, or was that?
Right, it was mostly foundation aid that we had about 18,000 in additional foundation aid, but there were some offsets to some of our expense-driven aids. By the time they give us the April estimate, they have some more expenses that they're basing it off of, so it's a little more accurate. And there were about 3,000 reductions.
Was there something I read in the budget about the change in what's aidable through BOCES?
They had taken a look at changing those expense-driven aids, but the decision this year was not to change any of those.
Because I know we rely on, we make a lot of our decisions based on that. Okay, very good. Okay, so I think one of the first things we wanted to talk about were the additional add-ons that Mr. Albano had asked us to consider. One was the busing, and the conversation about the busing was that there was a lot of recommendations through our administration, through parents, that if we brought back the one-loop system, that it would help with the traffic, the congestion, and also that parents felt that their kids were at school for too long of a day. So we had asked at our last meeting for a survey to go out, and the survey did go out electronically this past week, and we are just receiving those results now. And I think we kind of want to maybe get some more information now. I know for myself. So I know the way that the survey was asked, it was if the one-loop system was put back into place, would you then drive your children to put your children on the bus rather than drive? Right. Now, my question is, if we go back to 5 buses, does it have to be 5 buses in the morning and 5 buses in the afternoon? Is that the way the contract with the busing works?
Pretty much, we have those buses for the school day.
For the school day. Yeah. So there isn't an option to just make a change in the morning.
One run versus the other, no.
No. So it's all day.
If you're doing if you're doing arrivals, then you're doing dismissals.
Okay.
It's the same.
Yeah, it's the same.
So I think
fee.
that's something that we need to consider too. Okay. Is there any thoughts or questions from anyone on the board regarding that? The difference in cost is $175,000. Where we would then have to dip into the fund balance for another one.
I think what's important, and I don't know if everyone's aware, is these were not included in the proposed budget.
Correct.
So currently, we're looking at
add-ons.
$1.8 million was what's potentially, that's in the proposed budget. Mm-hmm. So this would be in addition to that. Mm-hmm. So any one of the buses, adding the OCAD, or potentially the digital sign was kind of like a throw-in to add up new signs. So that would be in addition to what's proposed.
Right.
So I guess one of the things that we could consider is removing some of the things that were proposed if we wanted to bring the bus loop in. But then that would be maybe removing the SRO, maybe we have the STEAM teachers that were for the coddle, so I think there's discussion that could be had there too. Like if we feel strongly about what was proposed, then I think we really are talking about adding.
So the big drivers of what was proposed new is the SRO, the guidance counselor, and the STEAM teacher. Those are the 3 new drivers of that added cost. In addition, and also just increasing salaries and benefits and their nature.
Plus a little bit larger classes
Yeah.
at the high school, so we had to add like 0.2 in certain
right.
teachers.
Right.
So
that's
staff.
a need. We're not even going to
right. So that's going to
address.
happen.
Correct. And the 3 items that Pete mentioned are all driven by our strategic goals. So that's very important to remember too. So we're it's planned really well. We're headed in a certain direction, and the budget supports that.
Yeah. I would say out of those 3, though, I'm a fan of the SRO, but the SRO doesn't really line up with the goals. It's more it's more in line with what we've been doing for the last 2 years, of increasing security, and also, well, I guess it can also be included in the social emotional piece of
the
things.
counseling part of that, and
but
the relations.
The STEM teacher and the guidance counselor are right smack in with the goals.
Right. And even the guidance counselor, there's a mandate that they need additional counseling.
Right.
Maybe not a social worker, but at least a guidance counselor.
Right.
Right.
So this one's a mandate.
Okay. So with the SRO, I know we're kind of jumping around here, but I mean,
But that's okay. We're just here for a conversation, and that's what we're supposed to be doing.
I brought it up last time, and I don't know what what the proper way forward is, but I think we still could potentially have some more discussions with the town about that in terms of what it's going to cost us, because the current proposal is for us to pay salary and benefits for that officer for 10 months for the school year.
Prorated, the number of
Prorated
days.
10 months, right. Which in the budget is about 120,000, right? I know that a very, very common and popular model, and you sent me some numbers of some Westchester districts that are doing SROs. A very common model is 50% of the total salary and benefits, which is a better deal than 10 months, right? I'd rather pay 50% of the entire year than 10 months of the year. So I just wonder if there's some way we can maybe, discuss that a little further with the town. I know it's because that would bring potentially that cost down to, 120 is 10 months, right?
Yes.
Right.
So, I mean, you're talking about probably like, 80,000 or something if it was 50%?
Right, we were thinking it was about 150, 160 for a full year.
So that's it's a little better than 120, right? So, again, and I know that, the town doesn't really have any financial incentive to work with us, but I think it does make sense. I think it's something that the town should want. I know they're also having similar discussions with Eastchester
I know,
School
I was
District
just going to
as
ask
well.
that.
So whatever they did for us, they have to do for them, I'm sure. I mean, it would have to be the same. But anyway, it's just something that I would like to see if we can have a little more discussion about, whether or not there's any wiggle room there in terms of that.
Okay. And again, we're going to come back next Monday for a scheduled workshop, so anything that comes up today, we can readdress on Monday when we get back together. Okay. What about any thoughts regarding, so the busing, where are we? We're not sure.
So the results of that survey, might as well discuss that for the audience as well, right?
Yeah, I don't think it didn't include all the families.
Yeah.
The response rate was not that high.
There was
So 200 and
534
but for Cottle it was
responses.
213 that responded.
534, not bad for 3 days. Not great, but not
Right.
bad.
And it was 70% in favor.
And it was 70% in favor of
But
it.
they didn't distinguish between AM, PM using it. Yes, so there were
The
things that we
survey
don't
didn't
know.
distinguish AM and PM.
Well, it's 70% of those who are driving, not
number.
everyone who
Well, we've been
responded is
presenting
driving.
it.
I had 213 twice.
It wasn't presented in terms of cost. It was presented in terms of would you stop driving?
Oh,
your
when it was
child?
presented, put it on.
Everyone wants everything.
Well, yeah.
Prices.
So you're saying on the survey it should have been indicated
Yeah.
what that cost would be?
We've heard some different feedback.
wonder if they
Some
don't realize
people, they don't like the kids sitting in the auditorium in the morning and then in the afternoon, so the parents pick them up. Sometime the early loop is too early, so the kids are not ready to get on the bus at that time, so the parents then drop them off. But I think the hard part to determine is really who's on them every day, unless we had a head count of every day who's getting on those buses.
Shouldn't we have that kind of number somewhere? How full are the buses?
Yeah, how full they are.
I can get
Yeah,
that from
we-
the
that's not
transportation
before.
contractor, so I can bring that to you next
Right.
week.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Lee,
Has
the
any
the number
buses full?
here includes the savings for the staff that won't be on the buses.
Yes, it's a net number,
It's a
so
net number.
we did take off for the overtime costs that would be changed and different, but we had to add back in, there would be additional monitors instead on the buses,
So
so
2 more buses, right?
3 more we're probably looking at, from 5 to 8.
Yeah, we did ask that before.
It's
The
net.
175 is net.
It includes.
So it's the cost of all the 3 new buses, and then the additions and subtractions of the staffing requirements.
And I didn't open the survey, but for parents who are new to the school, I don't even know if the survey explained what the loop is.
Or not,
Because
it's-
that's an unfortunate part of this,
Okay.
is not explaining a lot of things for new parents.
Okay.
So if I got the survey open, honestly, I don't know what it says. I didn't open it, I didn't respond to it. But if I read it, I'm not even sure I would appreciate what the whole discussion was
Okay.
about conflict.
All right, that's helpful, thank you.
The other thing to consider too with this issue is the traffic situation in the morning, because I guess 86, the survey made it seem like there would be 86 kids that would now take the bus rather than being driven. Of course, that's just a hypothetical. But that's a lot less drop-offs in the morning. It's a lot less traffic, a lot less cars pulling onto the road. So if that actually rang true, that's another problem that it would help, is just the volume of cars coming through the streets every morning. So that's another thing to consider.
In addition to Simonoi being closed.
Right.
So it may lead to really having to do another traffic study.
Well, there's two ways to look at it. So do we try going back to 8 buses for a year and see how it goes? There's a cost associated with that. Or do we make a commitment to a new traffic plan now that Simonoi is closed and be committed to a new drop-off pattern and working that out? I mean, we've talked a lot about it, potentially one-way streets, changing parking. There's a lot involved in that. It's not our expertise. We don't know what's involved. So I think there's two ways to look at it. Can we be ahead of it and knowing next year that there's going to be a change in Simonoi being closed and come up with a plan? Or do we say, okay, we try with the busing. If that alleviates a lot of the traffic, then we have an answer that way. So I think it sounds like we all kind of want to give it a little more thought. It looks like maybe more information should go out to the parents and a little more feedback from the community, because there needs to be a better full understanding of the cost associated and exactly what it means, a 2-loop or 1-loop system. So let's try and get that before next week.
What's the time difference? Because, I mean, I've experienced both, and now just choose to drop off my children. However, what is the time difference? Is it a half hour in the morning that kids are picked up earlier and a half hour later that they're getting home? Is it an hour before, an hour after? Is that worth $175?
Right.
I mean, to me personally, it's not.
Like a half hour, does that make a difference? Yeah.
But if that could be researched a little more?
The timing.
The timing.
Okay.
Like by adding.
Because it does seem like a long time, but is it worth that money?
Yeah, I also thought too, even though people are saying they would use the bus, I often wonder, will they really? Like, they're saying, yeah, I'd use it. Maybe I'll use it sometimes, but not all the times. So then you're paying for something for a whole year that maybe
don't know
not
if it's
everybody
gonna
would
be used.
use all
And
the time.
it's a lot- we're
So
talking
that's
about a
a
lot of
concern of
money.
mine too.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so let's wait on that for some more information, and we can talk about that again next week. The other consideration that Mr. Albano had asked us to talk about was the BOCES.
ACAD.
Okay.
The
Do we have that
5
here?
slots.
I'm not sure. What was the cost of that?
$150
150, I think.
for 5.
Yeah.
It's $150 for 5, which includes placement and transportation.
And the transportation, and it's almost, Lee, could you,
An estimate is about $50,000 because we pay per student. So it doesn't matter what size the bus is or what size we're doing it. We contract for that through our consortium bus company, so we pay per student, and it depends how many students are totally on the bus, and if it's all Tuckahoe students, or if we're able to share with another district. But the cost of the program itself is $20,000 per student.
and this is not a one-year commitment, because if students start the program next year, we're going to want to let them finish the program the following year. So this is not something that if we start next year, we could say, okay, it's not working. So now it's also important to know that children who have IEPs that mandate that this is what they should be doing, that's not what we're talking about here. So this is additional, and students who, I will say that Dr. Linehan has asked for this for the past, I believe, 3 budget cycles now, that there are students that have been identified that this could be beneficial for. My personal thoughts are, I almost feel like if we can't do it right, I don't know that I want to do it.
Everybody,
Right. Because you're limiting it on a financial basis, and there have to be a selection process, from what I understand, and
somebody gets cut out.
It's hard to say no. Who wants to say no? No one wants to say no.
What would the program consist of? Like, what kind of occupational training?
It could be mechanical, electrical,
Carpentry.
Culinary,
more like home ec technical.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
trade.
I did survey, I was Dr. Linehan's secretary. I did the survey. We're at the bottom of Westchester County, BOCES placements, at the bottom. And I know someone who went through BOCES who was a Tuckahoe grad, through the electrical program, ended up at WCC, got his degree from WCC. He makes $400,000 a year. This is money well spent on kids who are not interested in college. I know it's not fair. It's only 5, but we got to start with something. We got to start somewhere. And I personally think that it's a good step. And then, yes, you do have to make a 2-year commitment because it is junior, senior year. But I know this person very well. And he's making $400 bills, which is a lot of money. And it's a Tuckahoe grad who went through the BOCES program. I'm not saying everybody's going to get that, by no means, but it is a successful program. There is a study I did for Dr. Linehan. I called all of the schools in the county. We're at the bottom of the barrel.
When you say bottom, in terms of participation in it? When you say
Participation,
bottom
yeah.
of the barrel?
We sent
Participation.
now we're sending 2.
Right.
We were sending none. It's not right. We're not being fair to the children.
Well, let me ask, so if it's $20,000 for the classes, you mentioned that the transportation, like it's another 30 per student.
No, it would probably be total for 5, about that.
About
it would be-
50.
Right, about 50 is the estimate, based on,
And that's, I guess that would be dependent, say if we were if there was no one else in the consortium, like in our local neighboring
right,
school
if
districts,
the timing allowed that we could share, let's say, with Eastchester, if they
Could
were
that
sending
potentially
some-
cut
That
it?
would cut the
Yeah.
price.
can we find out if we
We
have
won't
any of
know
our
till
neighboring
next year.
schools?
Yeah.
Well,
when they
what about
send
if
the
they're in it
loans.
this year? You would know they're in it this upcoming year.
Thank you.
We could find out, but they will change possibly the number of students they send, which might not, they don't
Create
typically
room for our
the
kids.
number
So
of
in other words,
students
we'd have
we
to keep the
send.
money aside, and
They
then if
don't-
we
In
don't
case.
use it, yeah.
They don't route the students until the summer, so we really wouldn't know until later in the year how many students we would have to pay for and how much it would be per student.
Do we
was
know
also-
that we have
do we know
students who
some
are
students?
interested?
That's what I was
Yeah,
thinking.
I believe Dr. Linehan is
He
making a
has
request
something.
based on
Okay.
student needs. I think,
Do you
Harry,
think it
did
would be
you?
the right thing to do is maybe set up some specification on how you select people?
Yeah.
You get the
Oh, there
money?
would have to be.
Yeah, we would have to,
You have time to do that with what you can.
the selection.
Okay, let's,
Because if you have, obviously, what's the issue of going 5 and then 6
I know.
people to go, how come you didn't get to go?
Right.
You gotta
Right.
have everything in writing, cover yourself.
Or if we saved money, we could send the 6, if we could bus with somebody.
okay. All right, so let's try to get a little more information there from Dr. Linehan about the number of students, the selection process, and maybe we can get some more information regarding transportation costs. Okay. Was there anything else on that list
No, I
that
was
we
just
needed to
thinking, is that
discuss?
something that maybe guidance does or would know? Like what kids are interested
Oh,
in?
yeah, I'm
They
sure
should
they
know
know.
that, right? And they're doing that kind of stuff now.
And I'm sure that's why the recommendation was
Yeah,
made,
so
right?
it's,
Okay.
Do you guys remember why this was taken away from us? This was like 5 years ago?
Because of the cost. Because of the cost. There was, at the time, there was, I believe, 3 or 4 students, and it was, I think, 120 or 140. I don't want to misquote it, but it was, I think, 120 or 140,000. There were students that were in the program, and we had those students finish, but we just didn't.
It was the same thing with the busing?
It was the same year. It was the same year.
Busing. Now we feel like we can put this all back in because things are great. And we have the money to do it now. Because we do have, correct me if I'm wrong, I think our fund balance is 20% of our total budget.
Yeah, some of it's not available for appropriations.
It's not available for appropriations.
Some of it is not.
Yeah, I know. Because it's been appropriated, some people would say there's too much been appropriated for certain things.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think, that's something that we should be talking about. I mean, I think what the board has done over the last 5 or 6 years is decided to try and be conservative with the budget, create funds so that we wouldn't have to borrow. So I think that's always that balance, right? So, I mean, we've had multiple years now of where we didn't have to borrow to pay tax certs or other things. You know, is the community ready to potentially have to borrow if we continue to add the programs? And look, we're all for adding the programs, but
I think by saying that you're ready to borrow, the fund balance, you know, off the top of my head, so I don't want to misquote any wrong numbers, but I think we went from $3.5 million to $7 million in the last 4 or 5 years. So it's doubled, and we've appropriated a lot of that through tax certiorari's, so we don't borrow. But we have $3.5 million in there, I think.
yes.
And this year we used 500,000 of that. So, and that was sort of on the high end, if I remember correctly.
Well, some years we've been as much as $1 million, and we haven't finished this year yet. We have
Right,
a few
some years
more
we've been
actually on the next
200.
board meeting that we're going to approve. So it can be. We right now have our tax certiorari fund balance is about 25 to 30% of our possible refunds that we have to make, which is considered an adequate reserve.
So if we took some of that money out, it's not like we'd have to borrow next year if we get tax certs in.
No, it wouldn't be next year, but the concern would be really that if you had ongoing programs year after year that needed to be paid for, at some point, you wouldn't have the tax cert even to take from.
Right, but the busing issue, it didn't work, and I want to go, I was still packed every day. We said, well, that didn't work, let's go back to what we were doing. And then, obviously, if you do the BOCES thing, you know, we're worried about 5 kids, but we have $7 million fund balance that we could probably use to help. You know, I hear it's important. You know, not for every kid that goes to college, so maybe that's good for them.
Yeah.
Instead of just sitting on a fund balance, it's 20% of our budget.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I think I agree with everything you're saying. I think the concern, though, that I have, and Rob kind of mentioned it too, is just building programs based on the fund balance that are recurring programs, that are recurring cost, and just whether or not, you know, if we get to a point where we have leaner years and now we don't have that fund balance and we're actually relying on it to make a budget. But I guess your point is then some of those things just get cut back, we get rolled back.
We're cutting things back now when we have all this money in the bank.
Well, we're not cutting. We're not cutting.
Well,
really
we're not
anything.
offering it.
Right,
So-
right, yeah,
And we used to.
yeah.
No, listen,
It's a valid point.
what you're saying is accurate, and I think we certainly hear what you're saying. The question is the community also in, like, do they feel the same? Like, that's right, that's what we need to figure out. So you're here, which is great, which I said, we need more people to come out and speak up and be heard, so that we can make decisions that are in the best interest of everybody. We're 5 trying to make the best decisions for 1,200 families. But Michelle was the one who suggested we had this meeting tonight to see if we could have more participation. We have 6 people. So it puts us in a position where, yeah, we could approve it and we could say yes to these, but then in 2 years when we have to borrow to pay, then we'll be, you know, we'll go, oh, why'd you guys do that? So that's,
You have to borrow to pay.
well, in the event you had more tax certs, we wanted to continue to have these programs, right? So we're going to add, right now we're going to appropriate $1.8 million if we accept the proposed budget, right? And then if we approve the bus and the OCED, which we're for, that's another $325,000.
Rob, I'm looking at it a different
Right.
way. I'm coming at it that those are things that are going to help children.
Absolutely,
And even though I'm retired, I will still advocate for children.
absolutely.
So to question, and we just came up with these goals,
Mhm.
and it's to help all the children, and we have 5 now that we're going to be able to help, and it's not great, it's not a good number, but better than nothing.
Absolutely.
I think it's a moral issue
Mhm.
when you're talking about a $35 million budget,
Mhm.
and you want to spend $150,000 on kids.
Oh, I'm with you. I'll spend it all day long, every day. You don't have to ask me twice.
I'm worried about the certs later.
Okay.
Have they been going more or less? Have they stayed steady? Have they gone up? Are they higher than normal? What's the pattern been?
It varies from year to year. As I said, 2 years ago, we were up close to $1 million. This year, we're right now about 500,000, and there's another few coming on board next week. And there are more that could come through the rest of the year. It varies anywhere between
I'd like to just add to that. I mean, I support the tax cert reserve, and the reason for that is because in the past, when there was not a reserve, you're allowed by law, it is one of the only things you're allowed by law to borrow for. And so over the years, a lot of debt was put on the books, and we're paying for that now. Now, we just learned last year when we went for a capital project vote that our community really is cautious when we take on additional debt and raise taxes. And it is not just our community, because Bronxville, Scarsdale, and many surrounding communities all passed capital projects that were tax neutral, debt neutral. That is the trend. So if we want to grow for all of our students, because we want new libraries, new cafeterias, new STEAM rooms, and we want to be able to go the next step in our district for all students, I think we have to really cautiously plan our debt. And to worry about the tax certs later, that's what happened in the past, and that's what put a lot of debt on the books. So I'm in support of the plan. I think it makes good fiscal sense, but I also agree that we don't want to say no to what's right for kids and what the kids need. So it's a balancing act, and that's what the discussion is for, and we're going to have to figure out a way to do it. So, I think people have to understand the reasoning behind why the reserve was built. And it's built to not have future debt on the books. Because when we go out for our next vote and our next capital project, the next phase of where we want to be, wouldn't it be great if we could come out to our community and say, okay, this next project is tax neutral. It's a no-brainer. We can do this because we've planned for it. And I think that that's something that we really have to consider when we know that when we're asking the community to increase taxes, that doesn't go over so well. So that's something we have to consider. I don't want to say no. I never want to say no. I just want to have everyone have a full understanding of the whole picture.
How much is in the dollar amount in that reserve for tax certs?
It's about $3.1 million.
You have $3.1 million
After
in
the
the reserves for
budget.
the certs.
Correct.
Even after this budget?
Well, we're not finished with this year.
Right.
This year's not over yet,
Right.
but
No.
But I don't think we have a $3.1 million cert coming down the pipeline right now.
No, but this year so far, we've paid out $500,000.
All right, we paid out 500, up 3 point some odd million.
Or we could have borrowed
We
$500,000.
have 3 million, which is good.
That's the plan.
What about the boiler? Where's that coming out of?
The boiler would come out of
the unassigned.
the unassigned, unappropriated fund balance.
And we still don't have a cost for that.
We still don't have a cost for that yet. We've had a wide range of estimates. We're trying to narrow that down.
So that could hit the.
Yeah,
fund
what could
balance
be the
also.
range of that?
We've had anywhere from 100,000 to 700,000. We need to get more engineering studies to see what exactly we need.
Okay.
And to your point, Harold, I think sitting on a large fund balance is probably not right. It's not right. We should spend the money to a certain extent, as long as we're keeping some healthy fund balance for search and things of that nature. I guess the question is, how do you spend it? Do you spend it on recurring costs, or do you spend it on lump sum items that everything being for the kids? That's everything that we do is for the kids. So, but do you spend it on lump sum items that are not recurring budget items, or do you spend it on budget items? That's now and you could say, well, we could take that in 2-year chunks because
Right.
it's we can reevaluate after the next 2 years. But next year you'd want to admit more students for the next 2 years, right? So it really is sort of a recurring thing as well.
Well, that means it's a successful program.
Yeah,
And
no,
that's great for
exactly.
kids.
No, 100%. It's just a matter of
Can I just be clear on the phone call? I'm not against having a balance.
right.
I don't want to borrow when tax certs coming out. I'm just saying, is 20% the right amount?
Well, the 20% that you're is total, correct.
Right.
The unassigned by law is 4%.
So which would
Correct.
at the maximum. And that's what I'm saying. obviously we need tax cert, we have it so that we don't have to borrow. But do we need 3.1 million? That's the question.
Okay. Was there anything else, guys, that we wanted to ask of Lee while we have her here, while we're all together?
But I would share with just, we're talking about debt and what have you, and over the next, between now and 2023, so in the next 4 years, we'll have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we'll have about $6.5 million in debt coming off. But we'll be adding $9 million.
That 9 million is after the 6.5?
Well, we're adding for the capital project, and we'll have $6.5 million of prior debt, tax certs and what have you, being paid off.
So 9 minus 6.5?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Actually, 9.8.
9.8 minus 6.5.
And what if the projects they're doing go over budget as opposed to?
I'm sorry?
What if the projects that they're doing go over budget?
We're not by law permitted to borrow more than what the taxpayers authorized, which is the 9.8 million. So if projects came in higher than budget, the board would have to decide whether they wanted to scale back the project or look for additional monies from an additional borrowing. But we're not allowed to borrow any more than we've authorized.
Lee, what's the rate on the bonds?
We haven't gone out yet to bond, but right now they're estimating about, and they've actually, we're in a better place because we haven't bonded yet. They've gone down slightly. So it's about, I believe the last I heard was about they're estimating 2.5, and that might be conservative, it may be lower. We're also holding off on borrowing to next year. We're doing bond anticipation notes and things so that if we borrow next year, we can delay repaying to the year after. So that helps us financially with our position.
One person for all three.
So I had a question about the SRO. I think the SRO absolutely aligns with the strategic goal. And I am in favor of this person. However, would this person be responsible for after-school programming at all? And would they replace the Eastchester cop that we have here, standing here in the morning doing nothing?
No.
No.
No, and it's in the budget, I think it was in one of the slides earlier.
Yeah, where it was
But,
separate, I think that one was 27.
That was,
That's been a conversation we've had as
Yeah, I
well.
thought that was the case, Bob, but it was, I'm just wondering if we could include that in the SRO?
I mean, I think if there was a description that was up, but I think the description of the SRO is really to be in the building.
Yeah, emotional support.
Yeah, and greeting the kids in the hallways and what have you.
Yeah.
The
build
Eastchester Police
relationships.
outside they're being paid overtime.
Yeah, I don't even think the hours of the day would line up, actually, because it would then we would be paying overtime, to have them here earlier in the morning and then after school. So I understand, and we have heard this comment before, and we have asked for it to be addressed, so you are being heard, and we've asked our administration to look into it. So we don't want to see any dollars being wasted, and when we allocate money towards these, we want to see it well spent. So, again, I really think a much stronger focus has to be put on our efforts to improve this whole traffic drop-off, pickup, and what's going on around the campus.
Parking.
So we keep kicking this down the road every year, and we have these conversations. It has to be addressed. The timing couldn't be any more perfect with the closing of Siwanoy. We are, believe it or not, coming on almost the end of our school year here. So really for next year, we really should have something else totally lined up, and really a big effort has to be put into
Traffic.
getting this fixed.
when the officer's in the street, he's actually effective.
Yeah.
He or she.
You know, Lee, why
But
don't
when they
we-
stand on the sidewalk, it's not so effective.
Why don't we reach out to, when we had
Yeah,
our
my
traffic
house,
study
I could see
done
right
a
outside.
couple of years ago,
So I'm a good moderator for it.
and recommendations were made at that time, and at that time, the recommendation was made from the consultant to close Siwanoy, but because at the time it wasn't, we went with an alternate plan. So maybe if we can go back and take a relook, maybe have that consultant relook at it and see.
Would you like
Because-
to do another study, or would you just like to
Well,
look
maybe
at
you
the
could,
study that we
maybe, I
had
don't,
done?
like study about the study, but maybe a proposal as to,
proposal.
yeah, something, let's see what,
Proposal A,
I
proposal
think
B.
there's a lot of like things we
For
could try.
updating
We
that.
could go one way on
Yeah, there were-
middle. We
there
could
were a
put
lot of
parking
things,
on
yeah.
Siwanoy next to the football field and eliminate the parking on the
It
side.
shouldn't come from us.
right, we just need to get it in the
We can
right hands
decide
and
on
get
it,
it
but I
taken
think
care of.
somebody should propose it to us,
Okay.
please.
Okay, was there anything else that anyone wanted to address? Did you want to ask me?
Will we be getting a line-by-line budget anytime soon?
As soon as we have a finalized budget, we'll put it out immediately.
Do you have a draft?
I'm working on it now, but it's changed from week to week, so I haven't published it yet.
Okay. I just want to make sure there's nothing that we're missing. I think it's valuable to have the conversation. It's not, the five of us don't get to talk about this, so it's basically we're having our meeting in public here. But, we do have a lot to think about, really between now and next Monday, when we meet again at our workshop. We really have to have, be able to give Lee direction of what our thoughts are and where we're headed. So again, I'm going to ask the community if they have any input, comments, suggestions, requests, to please let us know. As Rob said, we really depend on hearing from you when we're making these decisions. And I think that's it. Is there anything else anyone wanted to add tonight? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
That if you look around the room, there's not a lot of people here, and that's the way it's been for quite some time. Last year, I think 31% of people voted no. Year before that, 35 or so voted no, but they were never here to tell us why they were voting no.
I know.
I don't
That's
think
the
that's
hard
fair
part.
to you guys or the administrators. If you're going to vote no, that's fine.
Right.
But you're right. But maybe if you came here and told people why you were voting no, they could fix it before the vote came, and then you could get what you wanted out of it instead of just voting no. So I think, and I know you guys do a great outreach with the pamphlets and everything, but I think the people in this room and on the budget committee need to actually tell their neighbors and friends, this is the budget, and this is what it is now. If you have a problem with it, come here next Monday, tell them what it is, and the other meetings after that. That way you don't just show up just to vote no, just to vote no.
That's why I'm looking for a line by line, because this is a snapshot, but a line by line will give you the specifics of how your tax dollars are being spent, be it on salaries, be it on raises, be it on textbooks, be it on the school lunch program. We need those numbers in order for us to make a informed decision on how we're going to vote.
And you're here,
And I'm
letting
here,
them
and
know
I've been
that.
asking for it, but this has been an
get it.
evolving piece of paper. So
But
that
instead of just going and
obviously,
vote no, you're actually here trying to do something about it.
I've been trying to do something about it for 27 years. I'm telling you, you need the line-by-line budget. You need it before it's finalized if you want people's input.
So Lee,
Not while it's being
No,
evolved.
that's-
Whatever the budget advisory
That's certainly
committee
fair,
does,
but I mean, when you look at what we're discussing, I mean, and you've seen it, you know this, 80% of our budget is salary, benefits, and retirement.
Right.
That leaves very little to implement programs.
we need to have a line-by-line.
Yeah.
That's all it makes.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
It almost feels as if you're hiding something, not
No.
you, you're hiding something.
No, I don't think she's hiding. She's very transparent, I think. I don't think she's hiding anything.
Well,
I
then
think
I
we
would like
know.
the line,
what
well, I had to foil it, okay?
Okay, that's fine. You have the right to do that.
I was waiting for it.
Okay.
I'd like it this week, Lee. Whatever it's
Okay,
working on, I'll take your draft.
Okay, you made your request. Okay, all right, so we're gonna get out the line by line, Antoinette, thank you. And, we're gonna meet again next Monday. Harry, thank you, because I think what you said is very valid, that we do need to hear from the community. And I do think that, you know, I've always been very interested in the budget. Everybody knows that. I think since we've had a tax cap, I think there should be more interest in the budget, because when there are constraints, we want to know where the money's going. And it should be, there should, instead of being less interest, and I think that is what has happened since the tax cap has been imposed, and I don't know if anyone knows, but it is now a permanent tax cap was made this year, so it's not going away, this 2%, and it's designed that way for a reason, but it really should make the community more engaged, because we can't tax our way out of it. We are, limited. And so we should all have an interest in where the funds are going. I thank those who came tonight, because any input is valuable to us. So thank you for that. And I hope next week on the 9th, when we have our scheduled workshop, more folks come out and let us know what their thoughts are.
Yeah, we're supposed to adopt it the 23rd, so.
Right. The next meeting after the 9th, correct. Okay? All right, so that's going to be it for tonight. And we will be back here on the 9th. And we are open to hearing from you again. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.